Italian companies wishing to expand to US. So getting to know firsthand how to use this incentive and how to make the most out of it, it's of the utmost important, as you can imagine. So we will look forward to listen to Katiuscia and Thomas, and to listen to the first-hand experience of Luigi in expanding activities of Sofidel into US to get a better grasp of this situation and these opportunities. Also because, as you may know, as everybody knows, there is a new chief commander-in-chief in town, and so maybe something could change in the near future. Let me hand over to Federica just to, let's say, present our speaker, and then the program will begin. And thank you again for joining the chamber. Bye.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for joining. I'm AmCham and Aming's international innovation experts from the US and Europe for this panel discussion on R&D tax credits, differences between Italy and the USA. Just to introduce myself, I'm Federica Di Pillo, Head of Communication and External Relations in AmCham Italy. And it's my pleasure to introduce you and to warmly welcome our today's speakers that you can see even on the screen. We have Katiuscia Terrazzani, Managing Director from Aming Italia, Thomas Folsom, Managing Director, Aming USA, and Luigi Lazzareschi, Chief Executive Officer of Sofidel Group. So we are going to share and discuss some findings from Aming's second annual International Innovation Barometer. I encourage you to read the report after this session if you haven't already, because this year's report takes a deep dive into global innovation trends and couldn't come at a more important time. As we see it here today, the world is still struggling to cope with the economic and social implications of the coronavirus crisis. And innovation, primarily by delivering a vaccine, is humanity's best hope to protect both lives and the economy. It is perhaps not unreasonable to say that research and development has never been more important. And while the pandemic is applying some pressure to companies' budgets, the overall picture remains one of hope and positivity. Technology continues to evolve, unlocking new and exciting solutions to a whole world of challenges. And new funding opportunities are beginning to emerge. But are companies using these opportunities sustainably to build a better future? And we do not also not forget the coronavirus is not the only crisis facing the planet at this time. The climate conundrum looms as large as ever, and innovation again holds the key to escaping its worst effects. So are firms focusing on sustainable innovation, and what's driving such efforts, and what needs to happen to improve businesses' ability to sustainably innovate? Today's speakers from Aming were heavily involved in the creation of Aming's International Innovation Barometer, so they have a deep understanding of the themes and outcomes. They will be able to offer us insights into international innovation, which we hope will be invaluable for all of us, for you. But before jumping to the panel discussion with them analyzing the barometer, I'm pleased to leave the stage to Mr. Lazzareschi, Chief Executive Officer of Sofidel Group. As you all know, this is one of the leading manufacturers of paper of hygienic and domestic use worldwide. Established in 1966, this is an Italian group that has subsidiaries in all over the world with more than 6,000 employees. So Regina is his most well-known brand. And Sofidel Group is a member of the UN Global Compact and the International WWF Climate Savers Program. Considers sustainability as a strategic factor with regards to growth and is committed to reducing its impact on natural capital and maximizing social benefits. The group believes that companies have the responsibility of playing a fundamental role, not only in terms of the production and distribution of goods and services, but also in guaranteeing a long-term social and environmental advantages to all stages of the value chain. So Mr. Lazzareschi, thank you very much for joining us, and to you.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, here I'm just to witness, let's say, our experience, what we have done more or less in the last, especially the last few years. The company is more than 50 years old, but it had a tremendous growth, especially in the last 15 years, when we start our, let's say, internationalization process. Our product, I mean, at the end, thanks for the introduction. We are not known as Sofidel by the most. In Italy, I believe most of the people that they are attending today are Italians, so they know our brands, Regina, and the most important product we have is Rotoloni Regina. So unfortunately, I'm making toilet paper, a product that actually in this period of time where hygiene, I mean, is a very important and needed products. You may have seen several videos in which people in many areas and countries have had heavy discussion. They have fought to buy or to steal toilet paper on shelves. The Sofidel Azamia has quite a good relationship with US. We have invested significantly on that market. We have been there since 2012, so 8 years. Probably we have one of the largest investors in US. We have invested more than almost $1.2 billion. This may probably, if we are the first, maybe we are the second or the third largest investor in US. And today, I mean, I imagine the topic is going to be innovation. Actually, probably we didn't develop much innovation on our technology, on our process, on establishing ourselves in the US. Today, over there, we have 6 factories. 2 of them especially are really very big. But the innovation actually that we brought there is what the company was already doing in Europe. In Europe, actually, probably I don't know if it was in your introduction or not, but we have production facility in 12 countries. And very large, while in US today we are in 6 states. Our innovation was just simply to do what we are doing in Europe. It's strange to say, and I invite all the time our fellow Italian entrepreneurs to have the courage and invest in the US, because for the type of industry that we have in Italy, I believe in general we have a quite, we are quite ahead compared to the US one. When I say so, I'm comparing, let's say, all type of industry compared to all type of industries. Italian, so I'm talking about, say, food process, mechanics, pharmaceutical too. I'm not talking about high tech. There probably Italy doesn't have much to say, but bringing the company that we have on, let's say, the basic industries, food industry, we already will bring over there lots of innovation. So at the end, we didn't really invest much on R&D when we approached that market. We just brought there our, let's say, long-term strategies. Our product is very light and bulky, to serve a market, we have to be close to that market in order to be competitive and decrease the only cost that we can decrease, that is logistic and transportation cost. So proximity strategy is one of the pillars of this company. The second one that partially has to do with innovation is to have new technology, new machines. Today, worldwide, this company has the single largest paper machines in terms of dimension, but also the newest one. And that gives quite a big advantage competitive-wise, but also quality-wise. And the third one that I believe was mentioned before, that is our third pillar, is sustainability. As you know, paper has an impact on the environment at the end. We have to do also with, say, three main areas that are very delicate. One is water usage. The other has to do with green gas emission, because to dry paper we have to burn natural gas. And third, we have to deal with forest. So all our fiber that we are using are certified. So we are brought, let's say, these three pillars exactly as they have been developed in Europe over there, and I have to say successfully. In the US, our investment in the US was really very well supported by local government. If I have to say about innovation, we didn't really apply much to, say, public support in terms of innovations. Also because our type of investment is really heavy capitalized, and all the time that we have been proposed, let's say, innovation, especially in new development site, the amount of innovation that was available was really very limited and was really time consuming, but also resource consuming. So at the end, the return on, let's say, on that application, if it was not negative, didn't have really a big return. So we didn't apply much on, let's say, public source so most of our innovation is done internally. Also, Italy, as you know, is not really very supportive for grants dedicated to innovation. We are using it a little bit more in other countries, for example, like Sweden or Germany, for what has to do with Europe. I mean, I believe that might be enough for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Lazzareschi, for having shared with us your success and achievements, international achievements in the field of sustainability. But we will have the chance to get back to you on these topics later on. So before we jump into the barometer, before we get back to the analysis of the barometer, I wanted to put international innovation into perspective with the chart that you see on your screen now. Yes, you see it. This is taken from the latest edition of Aiming's R&D benchmark report, which compares different countries' R&D schemes, both in terms of generosity of the scheme and the ease of application to receive the benefit, which is indicated by the colors red, amber, or green. As you see, Italy sits in the middle of the field in terms of generosity, with the US towards the right of the chart. And the EU countries make up the majority of the rest. So, Katusha and Thomas, back to you. Could you give us a brief overview of the Italian and US tax credit schemes?
Yes, thank you, Federica. Oh, yes, Thomas, this is your turn. Go.
All righty, thank you, thank you. So just to get started, the first thing I would say is to keep in mind, you saw the prior scale. What I would say is, as far as generosity, the U.S. Percentage, flat on its face, that you see is lower, but the amount of includable activities, or the definition of what the U.S. code says is qualifying activity and therefore qualified expense, is very broad. So credits can be substantial. So then if we go with that in mind and turn to the slides here, to qualify, you have a basic 4-part test that you see there in the first column. And instead of boring you and reading through those, what I would just say is, when you're working through developing a new or improving an existing product, that's very important to note. It's improving an existing product. So you should think an evolutionary improvement, not a revolutionary improvement. And then why that's important is because the credit is actually spread evenly, regardless of the size of your company and regardless of whether or not you are doing something revolutionary or evolutionary. And so that adds to the broadness of the definition. If you look at the expenses that are eligible in the second column there, it's salaries that you're paying your staff, subcontractors or contract expenses, materials and supplies for building prototypes, for example, as well as if you're developing software, you might be using cloud computing. And now cloud computing is also an expense that you can include in your calculation for research credit instead of taking it as a standard deduction. So how does this all work? Well, you can claim the credit on an annual basis, and you can use the credit to reduce your taxes. If you're not paying taxes in that current year, you can look back 1 year, and if you paid taxes in that year, you can request a refund, or you can carry it forward to future years and continue to calculate credits each year until you are in a taxable position or a positive position, and then the credits would reduce your tax. Currently, the latest statistics indicate that over $11 billion were claimed in the United States for research credit. The good news with that is, unlike many other aspects of tax and tax incentives, there's no limit. So individually, you can claim as large a credit as you are qualified for. And then if you have more credits than tax to reduce, you carry those backwards and forwards. The other aspect is we can claim 3 prior years. So we can file amended returns and request a refund on taxes in prior years where we either claimed too low of a credit or didn't claim a credit at all. One other thing to keep in mind is many companies are underclaiming or not claiming at all. You can go to the next slide, thank you. There is a latest statistic out from the IRS indicates that while less than 20,000 companies are claiming it, more than 6 million are eligible. And that is due to numerous things, including misunderstandings in what the law is, particularly what I mentioned a moment ago, that it's a evolutionary type of improvement as opposed to revolutionary. So as far as application, it's very easy. It goes along on a form that's filed with your tax return. The difference in claiming that research credit and including those expenses that I mentioned a moment ago as a credit instead of a deduction is about 15% net benefit. And that ranges depending on the calculus of the calculation, but we see as high as 15% increase over claiming the expenses as a typical deduction. Another area that it is a big input for particularly European companies, is companies who follow IFRS accounting. It is now eligible to include the U.S. research credit above the line and thereby increase your EBIT. Companies following U.S. GAAP cannot do that, but what they can do is where you are not utilizing all of your credit, you have more credits than you have tax, then you can carry that credit forward, and it is a future tax benefit for you, or investment that increases your net worth in the event that you were going to sell sometime in the future. So taking all of that in, that top bullet point in the right column there, what you see is you might have more credits than you have utilization. That's what I was talking about, the carry forward aspect. One of the interesting things about this piece of code section is it is one of the very few pieces of code, tax code, that allows a taxpayer to make estimates. And in fact, in many cases, it requires estimates. So that's an interesting aspect compared to other tax code positions. And then finally, I would just say that each year you should review your calculation, regardless of whether you think it's larger or less, depending on your activities, because things do change and it may require a change in your calculation. Katusha?
Thank you, Thomas. So coming back to this scheme, first of all, R&D tax credit in Italy among the financing innovation tools is for sure, I would say, the most viable and popular use, let's say. And you have to go back to 2015, because the scheme you see here for Italy reflects the scheme we had till 2019. In 2020, we had a big change, and this can give me the opportunity to present the main differences. First of all, what you see here is the generosity. You can go back, sorry. Thank you. The generosity percentage in Italy was previously above slightly 20-25% till up to 50% for certain kind of eligible costs. With the new scheme, it is lower in terms of rates. We will see also later. It doesn't mean that the benefit for the company is lower. It depends on the calculation method, which is changing from an incremental to a volumetric one. So it means that we are using the absolute value of the R&D that we are considering. In terms of ease of application, here for the old scheme, we see an amber color. It is correct, I would say, that is reflecting the complexity and the bureaucracy which is behind this kind of incentive. On the other side, it is a question of interpretation. So for the new scheme, which is the new one, which started last year in 2020, I would say that this amber color could move into more red one, because the interpretation of the law is still undergoing. And for example, the aiming team in innovation with the composition of competencies is really studying it in order to be able to support clients in a very effective way. So if we go into a more detail for the 2020 scheme, thank you for the perfect. As I was saying before, so the volumetric aspect, the absolute value of the R&D is the main change that is bringing also other major differences. The major one is related to the fact that we are enlarging, I would say, the kind of eligible projects we can consider. For example, the aesthetic and design. So we are introducing new sectors. This is very good for Italy if we consider fashion and furniture. On the other side, we are still considering the classical, I would say, R&D activities, fundamental industrial and experimental research. And then we are going back to an aspect which is the innovation processes. On the qualified eligible expenses, I would say this is quite similar to US, so I'm not going into the detail. And moving to the key facts, I would underline for sure the fact that we can carry back 5 years and 3 years forward. So we are going to a sort of long run view, so which is helping our companies, Italian company entrepreneur, to think about a long run strategy in terms of innovation. On the other side, I would say, which is not written here, something that we are still expecting that was in the previous scheme is related to the foreign owned R&D. It means that we have, especially for large corporations, where the headquarter is abroad and the R&D is commissioned by the headquarter to Italy, it is not included in the Legge di Bilancio 2021. And we are expecting to have a change because it will impact positively this kind of big corporation. Moving, I would say, to the last slide regarding the new scheme, in terms of rates, as I was saying before, the rates are lower. You see here divided into the main I would say kind of projects we can consider. We are back to technology innovation, which is very good. We are underlining also with the new law the fact that green technology and also digital innovation is key for the development of our enterprises. And as I was saying before, design, so the new sector of furniture and fashion could claim in this way. So rates are lower, but it doesn't mean that the benefit for the company is not there. And also the fact that we are enlarging sectors and eligible projects, it means that the incentive we have today that we can use from 2020 is something that is boosting innovation for our entrepreneurs. So go back to you, Federica.
Thank you. Thank you really very much to both, because you made an accurate and precious analysis. So now turning to the barometer itself, the 313 respondents in 13 countries across Europe and North America were asked whether they carried out their innovation locally, internationally, or both. The results are now up on the screen, yes, and the US and Italy tend to conduct their research and development both locally and internationally. To you, Thomas, what do you think about the poll results? What do you think is driving the differences in answers to this question?
Well, I think there's a couple things, but with respect to the USA companies, many of our companies are large, diversified companies with holdings globally. So I think that plays an impact and why you're seeing the US as local and international innovation. Second, I think there's a big aspect of companies are looking for what is the most beneficial. So they look at these locations and they look around for good talent, and then of course they're looking for what's economical. So certainly, just because you have a good talent pool, or just because you have a good incentive program for innovation, doesn't mean that you have both together. In fact, a recent example I heard was in the Ukraine, that there are very low wages and very highly educated and talented software developers, but there are no incentives. So companies are looking for a mixture of those two aspects, but I think they're also driven by where their facilities already exist, particularly if it's a lab type of innovation, as opposed to software development where they can access their talent remotely. So I think there's several things that are playing into it. Katusha?
Yeah, thank you. I would say, Thomas, that also in Italy we have, I would say, in terms of elements you were underlining, we are very similar. looking to the response of the Italians, I would say that is reflecting for sure the composition and the mix of the market we have. So keep in mind that more than the 90, I would say 92% of all the SMEs, so small and medium companies, are there, and we are talking about more than 5 million of companies. So the fact that we have a reply which is locally only and local internationally is reflecting the fact that we are there. We are in Italy and our company are Italian, with their facilities, with their talents, and also the fact that we have particular incentives that can help innovation, investment, boosting. So I guess the reply is really reflecting this.
Thank you. Thank you. But let's see, a budget is obviously crucial for research and development. Many countries have implemented incentives to boost R&D spending. And as you can see in the slide, the most popular is R&D tax credit. Companies consider the tax credits as a diverse and reliable form of funding. Although it is positive to see the growing uptake of incentives, this should be used to supplement as opposed to fund an entire R&D strategy. More established businesses, as large corporations, obviously can fund innovation themselves due to their deeper pockets. But for example, small and medium enterprises, they do not have the resources for applications. So private funding and debt funding play, let me say, a vital role for them. So to you both again, what are your thoughts on the answers to the poll questions? Thomas and Katusha.
Katusha, you wanted to start first?
Yeah, why not? So yes, as I was saying before, and it is also the response you see here, 56% is the major incentive, the R&D tax credit, as I was saying. So most popular, reliable, and for sure, on the other side, you can see that the self-funded and the equity debt funded, and as you were saying before, Federica, especially for the small and medium company, this is the major resource they use. It is also a question of mindset and culture of our enterprises. What is a bit surprising, but not so much, is the crowdfunding. Crowdfunding for me is a bit reflecting our the fact that Italian people and Italian enterprises, the smallest one, they are in a certain way looking for handmade incentives in a certain way. But yes, it is not surprising me. R&D tax credits for sure the major incentive, and as also the CEO of Sofitel was saying before, national grants, international grants in Italy are not so, let's say, sponsored, and we need to have a major support in order to be able to use it and to be successful. Clear. So for you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say, to start with, I find it interesting to see that 38%, more than 38% in the U.S. are claiming the U.S. credit. Considering the latest statistics that I mentioned a few minutes ago of how few companies are kind of claiming the credit compared to how many are eligible. So that's an interesting statistic. Similar to Katusha's comments on crowdfunding, it seems interesting as well, considering per capita income for the U.S. and presumably this income would leave availability of crowdfunding. Italy and the average are much higher than the U.S. on crowdfunding. So perhaps there is some generational cultural gap or difference in participation or the want to participate in crowdfunding. I think we might be seeing in the U.S. that both the people who have the money available as well as the people who are making decisions in our businesses are more inclined to take traditional investment, both as a business and an individual. So I think perhaps, as we've mentioned earlier, Italy might be a little bit ahead of us there on that aspect. The other aspect is grant funding, both for the U.S. and international. The U.S. I would have expected that 20%. There aren't a lot of grants in the U.S. The ones that are there are pretty powerful, but it's an interesting number to see 23 there. I think that's probably right, considering the fewer amount of innovation grants that are available here. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's go ahead to external support and application processes. Application processes to the financing methods can be complex, and they require a detailed understanding of the product and the sector to provide the necessary detail. People need guidance, particularly as projects become more technical. So aiming, the aiming experts ask their respondents whether they have external support to access funding for their innovation projects. Results are up on the screen now, and Katyusha and Thomas, again, can you explain us why an external support is important for the application to the financing methods?
Yeah, thank you, Federica. First, yes, for sure, external support is needed. When I was saying before that the complexity and the bureaucracy behind every incentive we have is for sure an element that is asking for external support. So especially also in the Italian context, where today we are moving from an old scheme, if we look to the R&D tax credit, to the new one, 2020. And above all, if we are also including the transition, the more enlarged transition 4.0, the entrepreneurs, so the Italian companies, they need external support. Second kind of answer that we see also in the response, the companies are moving from a kind of actor which is external support, which is an accountant, to a specialist. This is reflecting the fact that you were underlining before, that it's not simple a question of accountability when you are claiming. You need also to enter in detail the sectors of your client, enter in detail the processes and production methods they are using and why they are doing that kind of innovation. And this is why the teams we have that are available for the clients are a mix of PhD consultants, math ones, engineers. They really need to have this kind of support to have a success claiming. So to you, Thomas.
Absolutely. You know, very similar here in the United States. Engineers, the math people, as you mentioned, we also have lawyers on our team here. You know, I would say that the U.S. application seems fairly simple by the aspect of a 1 to 2 page form that's filed with the tax return, but that form can be deceiving as the code, the tax code, the regulations that support the code and explain the code regularly change, even though they're supported by both sides, Republicans and Democrats, and the last 2 administrations have expanded that code. It does change from time to time, and moreover, one reason we do employ lawyers is because we have about 30 cases that have gone to court, and this represents about half of them. This is a 6-inch binder, and so you have to have a very detailed knowledge of that information. Our folks, our project managers, go through a rigorous training program that includes more than 30 classroom style trainings. So if you would, it's like, and I don't, hopefully this translates, but I think it does. In the US, if I go to my general practitioner because I'm not feeling well, or to go to have just an annual checkup to my doctor, If he finds that something's wrong with my heart, he'll refer me to a specialist, a cardiologist. I think that's similar for the tax credit, research credit. We go to our financial planners, we look at our CPAs and trust them to do our tax and attest work, our auditing, but then many of them, and we work with many CPAs and planners, will refer to an expert. So it's very common here. And I think the reason why is because while it is a small area in our tax code, it's very detailed and requires a very detailed review.
Sure. Now, the COVID crisis, COVID-19. Talking about the global crisis due to the COVID-19, many companies have slashed future budget, focusing more on short-term cash flow and liquidity. But surprisingly, the majority of the respondents are still expecting budget increases for R&D. For sure, public funding initiatives can take some credit here, and governments are recognizing the importance of innovation, and while businesses may reduce budgets, state funding is ramping up. Katusha, do you agree with this?
Oh, yes, Federica, for sure. As what we see here in terms of response is really impressive in terms of 48% of somewhat increase in Italy and also significant increase at the 24%. It's true when you were saying that COVID emergency was pushing a short-term view, so cash flow, liquidity, but what is emerging here is giving me some additional elements. And first of all, the fact that as Italian people, we are optimistic, for sure, looking for opportunities despite the COVID emergency we are still living. Second, that innovation is key for the competitiveness of our enterprises. And third one, that we are looking, in any case, to the long-term view, so the sustainable business of our companies. And moving to what we are living today, especially in the Italian government, we are all reading newspapers and listening at TV that recovery plan is the major and the key actor we need to manage. We are talking about more than 2 billion of euros in terms of incentives that we can use. What does it mean? That what we call our Piano Nazionale of Resilienza and Ripresa and Resilienza is based on three main axes. The first is digitalization and innovation. So we are there. Second one is the ecological transition. So the sustainability aspect of our innovation. The third one is social inclusion. And if we go down into the 6 missions, I don't want to arrive to the detail, but again, digitalization and the fact that innovation competitiveness is linked to that is clearly there. Also the green transition revolution. And also we are expecting to have a special mission regarding education and training, because when we are talking about innovation, we are talking about economical resources, but on the other side, we need to talk about talent and people. So at the end, considering also that we have a government crisis on the way, okay, what we are expecting is really, with this optimistic view, looking to 21 and 26, that we will have programs that will, in terms of incentive, financing tool, that will boost the innovation strategy for our entrepreneurs. Thomas.
Yes, because we see, thank you, Katusha. We see that 42.3% of US respondents are expecting a significant increase in their R&D budgets. So why, in your opinion? Why, in your opinion, Thomas?
Well, I think it's very important to take into consideration the timing of the survey. And I think that had a large impact. At the time, the U.S. had not been impacted significantly. It was still pretty new. We remained fairly isolated from the global impact. A lot of people felt, this can't happen to me. It's an ocean away. We'd never had a significant impact from, for example, the bird flu or some of the other prior pandemics that we've seen over the last 20 years or so. So I'd be interested to see what the responses are today at this point with the U.S. being so heavily impacted by COVID. We've seen and heard from a lot of pundits that the economy was going to crash if certain things happen. We still haven't seen that. However, what we have seen is significant inputs from our government that are more inputs from the government into our economy as far as infusions with government benefits than we saw during the Great Recession, and they're now becoming comparable to what we saw during the Great Depression. So it becomes a question of what's going to happen. Is that sustainable? And therefore, if we were asked today the same question, would our same survey responses indicate significantly increase or more so on the somewhat increase? It's yet to be seen. And, right now, apparently the U.S. market is still very bullish regardless of what everyone said in the last 3 or 4 months. So I'm looking forward to a bright 2021.
Yeah. So remaining on COVID-19 pandemic crisis, I would like to get back to Mr. Lazzareschi. For sure, this is an event that will produce long-term social and economic impacts. And what is certain is that thinking about the future, many people believe that this dramatic experience may also serve, and to my opinion, should serve as an extraordinary opportunity for change. So this is yet another, let me say, wake-up call to engage in truly sustainable development. And this is the concept, for me, of transformative resilience. What do you think about this, Mr. Lazzareschi?
Let's say, apart from what happened on a short-term period that probably I mentioned just a little bit before, I mean, panic buying and let's say strong decrease in consumption in HoReCa, so restaurants, hotel, and catering, while a huge increase in demand at home consumption because people are on smart working and they're, not going out to movie theaters or to restaurants. They are consuming much more. But these, let's say, are short-term events. On a medium-term basis, what we are seeing, what we believe we are going to see, it's a much higher attention to hygiene, to cleanliness, to health. So we are producing many products that they have to do with hygiene, health, toilet paper, but also towels, wipes, handkerchiefs, napkins, doctor beds, and so on. So the demand for our product is going to increase significantly in the near future. If not something strange is going to happen in the next future. But the second most important thing that is going to change, and it has been disruptive in our industry, but I imagine in most of the industry, is the level of competences that we have gained in the digitalization. Everybody has improved its own ability, and then the increase that the e-commerce has had in on buying, say, consumer product, even fast-moving consumer product like ours. This is going to be, this has already changed dramatically the industry, the commerce, the usage of the product has changed. The way retailers are going to invest in the future, the way consumers are going to buy products, and the way we as producers are going to change our delivery process and our production process. Amazon taught us that, we could order a product and have it the next day. Amazon taught us that while today I was going inside a supermarket, I could find maximum 10 different types of kitchen towel. Mm-hmm. Going to Amazon, you can find an infinite numbers of kitchen towel. Just to make an example on my industry, but I believe in any other industry.
Yes.
So personalization is going to be key. I have to be able to present to the market not 1 or 3 or 4 SKUs, but in theory, a personalized SKU, and deliver it much faster than what it has been until now. So I imagine for this company, Sofidel, but for many other companies, innovation, R&D are going to be concentrated on this, on e-commerce, because the way we deliver today and the time of delivery and the number of SKUs, the number of products that we have to make is going to be incredibly more, higher than what it has been. There is where R&D is going to go, and I imagine of many other industry are going to dedicate themselves to this aspect.
Thank you. Let's talk again about sustainable innovation. We need to tackle one of the biggest challenges for research and development, sustainable innovation, as I said. Economic growth has often been achieved at the expense of the environment. Profit is often put before planet, but we do all believe now that they can coexist. Sustainability is something that citizens are aware of and want. It's no longer a nice to have, especially for young generations. So Katiuscia and Thomas, to you again, what do you think about the answer to your poll? Do you agree with these results that we can see on the screen?
Yeah, thank you, Federica. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very satisfied and impressed about the reply that we have for the Italian side. You see here, 52% that is saying it will improve my business performance, or the 38% that is international pressure. So, or the 40% it aligns, your customer increasingly demand it. What does it mean? I guess it is a combination of 2 elements regarding these 2, the type of answers we see here for Italy. First of all, you have to know that Italy is the first country at European level in terms of circularity in 2020. Before Germany and other countries are France, Poland, and Spain. What does it mean? That it is the sustainability for Italy is something that is linked to values and culture, also in business. On the other side, and it is, I would say, linked to the reply, which is international pressure on business to be more sustainable. What I want to say that the sustainability, as you were saying before, is no more nice to have. For me, but I guess you will be aligned with me, it is a sort of obligation. The overshooting day we had, so the day where we finished our resources last year in 2020, was the 22nd of August. The year before, that was 2019, was in July. What does it mean? That the lockdown we had last year, in the different waves we had, was really asking us not to use certain resources, or better use the resources of the planet. And so confirming that sustainability and innovation, which is linked to sustainability, is what we need to wave in the next years. So two kind of elements: the strong conviction for Italy that sustainability is our culture, is in our values. So the strong conviction in our entrepreneur. On the other side, the fact that sustainability is an obligation, has to be an obligation.
For sure. Thomas, to you?
Certainly. Well, I think, again, you're seeing the timing of this survey is impactful, in particular with regard to the legislation from the government. Perhaps not the rest, but at the time, now former President Trump was still in office. It was looking like he was going to be reelected, and the Trump administration applied much less, if at all any, regulation on companies to be sustainable. In fact, the Obama administration that Biden, now President Biden, was the VP, was much more stringent, and the Trump administration came in and relaxed many of those regulations, such as the coffee standard to reduce carbon output on U.S. production automobiles. Now we understand that the Biden administration looks to reinstate that particular regulation, as well as add additional ones, and rejoin some of the other accords around the globe. So I think if you ask the question now, I think you would see a higher response rate on the legislation from the government. As far as one aspect, our country and its whether or not it's in our culture, our country is very, very large and very diversified. So if you look at San Francisco, for example, the idea of sustainability is very high, and in the culture of the San Francisco area, it is a necessity, without question. But then you come to the opposite end, I guess, if you could imagine, and that would be Houston, here where I am, and it is the energy capital of the world, relying heavily on the oil industry and so forth. So that aspect, it brings a concern to people. What are we going to do? What's going to happen to the economy? I think when you speak with people on the individual basis, they understand that something has to change, but they also have more of a concern than other areas of the country of what that's going to look like economically. I think the best point in all of this is there in light gray, where it says that sustainability will improve your business performance, and 46% of the US, 52% of Italy, and then overall, essentially 43%. So I think there's a positive outlook overall, and that's, I think, positive for sustainability in general.
That's awesome. So, Mr. Lazzareschi, I want to get back to you again for a last thought. The importance of sustainability in the strategic approach of the Sofitel Group as veritable leverage for business and cultural growth is manifested in your sustainability decalogue, developed by your company, and which highlights the main benefits expected from the application of strict business policies, of social responsibility in terms of increased economic and productive efficiency. So access to financial markets and reputation. Can you please share with us the pillars of this approach, the pillars of this sustainability decalogue?
Yes, I don't know if Thomas understood us or not, because when we talk about, I tried several times to explain what is a decalogue, but it doesn't look like that it is English. So I said 10 principles.
Okay.
So let's, why a company, I asked in the past to several of my, colleagues, entrepreneurs, why do you do sustainability? And some lots of time I didn't have really good answers. It looks like it's on fashion, is expected, but at the end there is something more. And I believe if a company wants to invest significantly on that, it has to have they have to have a clear reason why they're doing so. So we wrote 10 principles. They may be a little bit different from company to company, but I believe most of them may be common. We made the sustainability a level of our competitiveness. It's not only because this company can have an interest on sustainability, but also because we believe we are gonna grow and build long-term competitive advantage. And probably you were saying before, with the new administration, I believe in US, there is going to be a strong impulse, a strong push, and this company, unfortunately, is much ahead of any other competitors in US, and we are going to really take a big advantage. And actually, a few days ago, we have been accepted by the Science-Based Technology Initiative, and we have engaged to reduce by 40% our CO2 emission. Is a very challenging 40% is a lot in this industry. However, the 10 principles I'm going to try to go very fast. First one, cost reduction. If I want to reduce my CO2 emission, I have to reduce my the usage of energy. We have invested significantly in the last 10 years. I'm talking about above $100 million. But all the investment that we have done, it has a positive return on the investment. Second, we believe that good practices in terms of sustainability is motivating people and is able to retain talents. 3, tax breaks. Government to reach the right level of CO2 emission, for example, they can do 2 things, or give incentives, things that really I didn't see much, or tax emissions. So since we believe that we are paying enough taxes, we are trying to decrease our emission in order to pay less taxes. Higher market standards. This mainly is to improve the standards, the environmental standard, in order to make it more difficult for some of our competitors that they are not using unfair competitive practices in terms of sustainability. 5, consumer satisfaction. Consumer, we believe they have an interest in buying at the same, let's say, price products that they have a higher content of, say, sustainability. 6, we are also producer of private label for retailers. We are a producer for companies like Tesco under their own brand, or Esselunga or Coop and so on. So we have to respond to those customers' need. So we have to be ready, because otherwise we will lose a big part of our market. 7, we have to anticipate stringent regulation, because in the future, for sure, regulation are going to be much more stringent on your emission and on the quality and quantity of resources, especially in terms of energy that you use. 8, to have an easy life, you have to be credible, and especially the local communities which you are based needs to trust on what you are doing. Otherwise, you're going to have a difficult time. 9, if you're looking for a standard loan, or if you want to go public, or you want to have a third party invest in your company and a fund, they are going to look at your environmental practices. Nobody is going to invest in a company that doesn't pay attention to the company sustainability process and policy. And 10, the last, but probably one of the most important one, enhance reputation, is what is creating, let's say, the invisible value added value on the balance sheet, is what is creating loyalty to the brand and to the company. Those are the 10 principles. I believe all companies should think about those. Maybe there may be an 11th one or a 12th one. Maybe one of them are not be interesting. But once that they have a clear idea on why they have to invest, they can achieve really very important results. Otherwise, it's just going to be a cost. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Katusha and Thomas, I don't know if we still have a couple of minutes left for a last question, if you agree. Many of those on the webinar today will be going back to their desks and talking to their clients. What one piece of advice would you suggest they share with them? To you both. Katusha, maybe?
Thank you. Yeah. I was thinking, but the main message could be that we are still on a turbulent wave. We need to start and get used to it. So start learning to surf the wave, transforming what we have in terms of complex context difficulties into opportunities, pushing this innovation attitude. So in other words, let's try to define a multi-year long-term innovation strategy for our companies and look after for the incentive that could help and support to catch new resources. So in order to create this virtuous circle and in order to accelerate your investment and your growth.
Yeah, and Thomas, what about you? What about your advice?
Sure. First, I'd start with saying, I work with a lot of CPAs and business advisors who conduct an annual meeting or maybe a biannual meeting with their clients. During that meeting, they use a checklist and they go through a checklist of items. I would suggest doing that with your business advisor or your CPA, using their checklist, but also developing one of your own and making sure that it helps the two of you understand where your company is headed and looks for incentives and so on and so forth to help your company grow. Second, in a single word, I'd just say tenacity. And the reason I like that word with what we've been talking about is many entrepreneurs and businessmen, businesswomen work with immense tenacity. They just relentlessly go after whatever it is. And so I would say bring that tenacity to two things. One, to your innovation, or three things. Your innovation aspect, and work that towards sustainability. I think those are two things that go hand in hand. We must innovate to sustain. You've heard that before. And second, or third, I guess, bring that tenacity to finding and applying for the funding that you are rightly deserving and rightly eligible for. So one, know that there's sources out there, and two, if you can't find them yourselves, then educate yourself or find an expert who can educate you and your company to find those incentives, whether it's credits or grants or whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to you. Our time is over. Let me thank you all for your precious time today. I want to thank the participants, of course, and our speakers. Thanks to you. Thank you, Katiuscia. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Mr. Lazzareschi, for sharing the precious results of your report and the precious experience, international experience of Sofidel Group. So I encourage everyone that has any questions about the results we shared to feel free to reach out to Aiming, write an email to aiminglab at aiming.com. And thank you again, really very, very much to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Enjoy and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao Federica, volevo ringraziarti, te e tutti i tuoi colleghi coinvolti nell'evento.
No, thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you.